With qualifications span over 10 years between the UWI Mona and the University of Maryland in USA, and professional training courses started in 1999 for 8 years, using the MM5 regional model, e-learning tools to the current Orville that is used at UWI. He's had extensive amount of publication on climate change and the impact of dengue, the Caribbean experience, monitoring and predicting agricultural droughts, a global study just to name a few. His academic specialization are environmental physics, climate variability, climatology, climate change. He is the director of Climate Studies Group UWI at Mona and the head of Department of Physics at the UWI Mona. He's also a campion old boy, Professor Michael Taylor.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me begin by doing two quick things. One, I want you to give Dr. Akar, you see they're giving me the... Sorry.
Good night! You can, all right, that was a test run.
And here was I about to take my seat. Anyway, quickly, let me do two things. One, I'd like you to give Dr. Carr Stewart a round of applause because she has set up my presentation so well. Thank you very much. Two, boy, these organizers have really taken a risk because, as you have heard, I'm a physicist passionate about physics. And to put a physicist passionate about physics in a room of people who love physics, you know, we don't care about sounds like boop, boop, boop. You know, they could go and have a big enough voice if they cut the microphone. So, just really want to say I applaud the organizers for really trying to think outside the box and for putting climate change on the agenda. And I want to do a very, very quick presentation talking to you about climate change and you. Now, let me explain the you. I mean you and a nice lady who was sitting beside me at the back who allowed me to take her seat and didn't say anything. And you. You know, I'm really talking about you as health professionals, but also you as citizens of Jamaica. And climate change is something that's important to every single one of us. And I want to do a quick presentation and try to suggest why it is that climate change is important to you and you and you and you and you. So I commend the organizers for, you know, thinking outside the box and putting climate change on the agenda. Here is how I want to do it, very quickly. I want to talk to you about why you must consider climate change. And what I really want to do is give you only 3 reasons. And after I give you my 3 reasons, you can do boop, 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 and I will sit down. 3 quick reasons, but I need to just set a quick context. And here is where Dr. Carr Stewart has really helped me significantly. Let me do this context. When we talk about climate change, I'm sure you would tell me you know what it is. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about distinct changes in measures of climate, things like rainfall and temperature and wind speed, etc., etc. But changes over a long period of time. So we're not talking about what's happening tomorrow, that's weather. We're talking about changes over long periods of time. But specifically, we're talking about changes due to human actions. Now, there are a couple of things that can cause climate to change. You watch, I know some of you watch Discovery Channel and these things. I know about Ice Age and Little Ice Age, and right, ma'am? Absolutely. Well, that's climate change due to natural variations. That's not what we're talking about. And I know some of you realize that if a volcano erupts, it puts particulate matter, you know what that is, thanks to Dr. Akar Stewart, in the atmosphere, and that can change the climate. That's not what we are talking about. And when you hear the discussion of climate change in the media and in the agenda, they're talking about change due to human actions. And specifically 2 human actions. Number 1, based on the presentation, is the burning of fossil fuels. Not garbage, it's that. Burning of fossil fuels. So anything you burn for electricity, for your car, for the airplane, for industry, that's the human action. But the second one, which you don't often hear about, is due to changing land cover. So when we cut down the trees and urbanization, that contributes to climate change. So climate change is these long-term changes due to human action, specifically burning fossil fuels and specifically changing land use. You know what they do now, because what they do is cause the greenhouse gases to increase. You see that diagram over there, the top one, which says CO2, that's 10,000 years to present. Can you see that the CO2 was kind of going along its merry way? And in the last 100 years, do you see the sharp increase and the spike? 40% since we started to burn fossil fuels about 100 years ago. And the methane was doing just about the same thing, going along its merry way. And in the last 100 years, since we start to urbanize and burn fossil fuels, 150% increase. Humans have been doing not such a good job when it comes on to climate. What do these things do? Well, you heard, they act just like a greenhouse. So they blanket the earth, they allow the sun's rays in, they heat up what's in the earth, and then they do what? Trap the heat. And so, if you want to know that climate change is happening globally, 4 things you must look for. 1, the increase in temperatures. So anywhere is orange has gotten hotter, and it doesn't matter whether you're on land or in ocean, you have gotten hot. And as the carbon dioxide has increased, which is a blue line on the right diagram, you can see that the temperatures of the earth, which is a red line, has just followed the increase. Well, if you're going to start to heat the earth, something else is going to happen. And the second thing is you're going to change rainfall patterns. And so anywhere is green has gotten wetter and anywhere is brown has gotten drier. You can't tell what's happening to Jamaica yet, but I will tell you. But you're going to change the rainfall patterns because you're putting hot air and hot water in certain locations. So you're getting hotter, your rainfall patterns are changing, your sea surface temperatures are increasing. That's the green line. You don't have to read the graph. And the intensity of storms, which is the blue line, no, the blue line is the sea surface temperatures, the intensity of the storms is the green line, is also increasing. And then the last one you can tell me is that, so temperatures are gotten hotter, changing rainfall, with changing the intensity of storms. What's the last one? The sea levels are rising. Absolutely. Why does the sea levels rise? Because we're melting the glaciers, the ice content, don't it? Yeah, but we also rise because if you heat water, water expands and it has to go somewhere. All right? So that's how we know if we look on the world that the climate has changed. But more importantly, that's the context I want to set. When you hear climate change discussion, it is this we are talking about. Long-term changes in climate, measures of temperature, wind, rainfall, etc., over a long period of time, but due to human actions. All right, so all I want to do is give you 3 reasons why you, and you, and you, and you, thank you ma'am for smiling back at me, and you, and the lady over in that corner there, must consider climate change. Ready? First reason. The first reason why all of us have to consider climate change, irrespective of healthcare professional or just ordinary Jamaican, is this. Our context commands it. All right, so you are my students. What's the first reason? Boy, if my students have answered me like that, they fail the test. So let's go again. The first reason why you must consider it is that? What on earth do I mean? This is what I mean. Listen, our context as Jamaicans is one of what I call being very climate sensitive. Let me make the case. You know why I say we're climate sensitive? The first thing is that we live our lives around climate patterns. Look on those green bars. Those green bars are how much rain we receive from January to December. You can see the pattern? First couple months of the year we dry, January, February, March, April. Then we go what? May, June, we get rain. Are we getting rain now? Absolutely. We dry out a little bit in July, and then we get the big rainy season, August, September, October, November. And so you get this kind of M-shaped pattern. The top little diagram, which has a little blip in the middle, is temperatures. We don't really vary a lot in temperatures, but we get hotter in the summer. You see those patterns? We live our lives around these patterns. So you know what we end up with doing? We plant around these patterns, and we reap around these patterns, and we clean drains around these patterns, and we take children out of school around these patterns, because nobody wants a hot, miserable child in the school in summer when the temperatures peak. We live our lives around this pattern. Can I prove it? Absolutely. Check this out. That's electricity generation and usage. Do you see the temperature pattern in it? It go up in the summer and come down towards the end of the year. This is how much water is in the Great River where we get some of our water. Do you see the M-shaped pattern in it? And then this now is bushfires in Clarendon. Well, I don't see the M-shaped pattern there, but it turns around. If I turn it upside down and do it, I get it. We get most fires when it's dry and fewer fires when it's wet. The point is, we must be climate sensitive because we live around this pattern. And even if we don't recognize it, this pattern is part of our everyday life. Well, as if that's not enough, the second reason that gives us climate sensitivity is topography and size. What does that mean? We are an island and we have a hilly interior. Well, if I'm an island and I have a hilly interior, look on where life takes place. Life either takes place on a steep hillside where you build a nice big house, and when the rain comes, it just comes down with it. Or life takes place on very limited little coastal plains like Portmore, and then when a heavy, intense storm comes and it blows the water, it just floods it out. But we don't have no choice. That has to be where life takes place, because we are an island with a hilly interior. But it makes climate a part of who we are. And so, if I show you JPS's power stations, you notice that it rings the entire island on the coast. And you only need one storm, actually one heavy rain like last week, to take out 6,000 people. And if I show you where all our parish capitals are located, so it's where our industry and our hospitals and work take place, it's on the coast. Climate is a part of us. We are climate sensitive. And then the last thing is, if that was not enough to just imbue us with sensitivity, is the things we make our livelihood, well-being, and get our water from. So where do we get our things, economy from? Agriculture, climate. Tourism, climate. Fisheries, climate. Anything you want that we make our life out of, climate. Think of our health. Think of our health and the diseases that you just heard spoke about. Dengue, climate. Asthma, climate. Respiratory, climate. And even recreation. I mean, we pattern recreation around the climate, you know. I tell you, 2020 cricket is only an adaptation to climate because they never want to be in the sun in the hot day. So they shorten the game and put it anyway. And then water. If we don't get rain, you don't have water. Put these three things together: livelihood, well-being, topography and size, and embedded climate patterns. Are we climate sensitive? Climate is a part of us even if you don't think about it. It is part of our daily existence. And I was going to show you just one more. This is what they call the Agriculture Productivity Index. You only need to follow the red line. Every time that thing goes up, there comes a beige thing, a gray thing, which is a hurricane, which is a drought, the hurricane, or a cloud, which is a blue one, or the circle one, which is a drought, and pull that thing down. That's the sensitivity to climate. So my first reason, it's a simple reason. Why should you think about climate? Why must I think about climate? Why, sir, should you think about climate? What is it? Very simply, our context commands it. To just end that point, you know what our context is really telling us? That we live lives linked to climate. Considering climate change is not an option for us. Climate change is part of our everyday life. All right, what's reason number two? If reason number one is that our context commands it, let me tell you the second reason why we have to think about climate, why all of us individual or health sector worker have to think about climate. It's this: our science suggests it. What is reason number 2? Let me tell you what our science suggests. Our science, and this is Jamaican science, this is what we're talking about, tells us that we are in a regime of unfamiliar climate variability. The climate is not behaving as it should or we are used to. You know what I'm saying? Climate change is not something for the future. Climate change is a now thing. Let me prove it to you. Remember when I told you those 4 ways we know climate change happens globally? What was way number 1? Yes. What was way number 1? So when the greenhouse gases increased, what happened? The temperatures. All right. Are temperatures going up in Jamaica? Do I need to ask you? Are temperatures going up? Yes. Absolutely. The first way our science tells us why our science tells us we have to consider it is getting hotter. This hotter, let me explain, it is manifesting itself in 2 ways. So the top one is trying to show you daytime temperatures, and those little red triangles, if they are up, it means everywhere that it's up, the temperatures have gone up, and it's statistically significant. And the graph on the right is showing you the increase in the number of hot days from 1950 to present. You can see the increase going up, yes? It is not a figment of your imagination. Daytime temperatures are going up, and we are having more hot days in any given year than we have ever had before. You know what that translates into? This. Summer seems to be starting earlier. Don't you hot now? And summer lasts longer. Science shows it. But if you think that is bad, you must look on the bottom, which is nighttime temperatures, and they are increasing faster than daytime temperatures. And you know what the problem with that is? Boy, if you live like me, you can deal with the daytime temperatures because you're going to your office and you're going to be in an AC. But if you're like me and not fortunate to have AC at home, when you go home, what do you first thing you do? You turn on the fan. And then you sit in front of this fan till you go to bed and you leave the fan on. Once upon a time, you'd wake up and turn off the fan in the middle of the night, but not anymore. Because the nighttime temperatures are increasing faster than daytime temperatures. What I've just pointed out to you is that climate change is an energy thing. It's not just a matter of hot, it's a matter of your electricity bill now. Because it's an energy thing. Let me push it one quick step further. How much you think you have gotten hotter by over the last 100 years in Jamaica? How much you feel hotter by? 4 degrees. Too little. 10 degrees over this side. 20 degrees hotter. Wow. Well, if we take the science, it turns out that over the last 100 years, Jamaica has gotten hotter in the mean by 1 degree. 1 degree. All right, but hold it. Now remember, I've told you what that 1 degree translates into. More hot days, more hot nights, longer summers. Hold that 1 degrees. We have increased by about 1 degrees. That's not the only way our science tells us climate is changing. Not only has it gotten hotter, but very quickly our rain has become way more variable. So the top one is the rain. And what you notice very quickly is that 1 year it is very wet and the next year it is very... You know this, last year we were in a drought. And this year what happened? Not only rain, flood. And if you had asked me at the beginning of this year, I would have told anybody, in fact, all the speeches I gave at the beginning of the year, I said, listen, this is the year to patch your roof. This is the year to make sure, because this year is the flood year. Not just rain, it's flood. And we have had it. And we shouldn't be taken by surprise because the science told us that that was going to be the thing. But our rain has become way more variable. So we haven't gotten dry or anything, we're just getting more flood 1 year, drought 1 year, flood, we don't get no normal. Turns out that the west is also getting wetter and the east is also getting drier in Jamaica. But one more way, the nature of our rain is also changing. This is how our rain now falls. We get these dry periods, and then when it rains, all right? All right, so science is telling us we're moving into an unfamiliar pattern. It is hotter, day and night, and our rain is far more variable and pouring in different ways. Third way, our science is telling us that we have changed is more storms. That left diagram is the number of storms that came within 200 kilometers of Jamaica between the 20-year period 1980 and 1999. 4! Look on from 2000 to the present. You can't even count them. 13, almost one a year. All right? We're getting more extreme events. And lastly, you could have told me this one. Our sea levels are getting higher. How do I know? This is Negril. And if you can get to look on that diagram, there's a little green dotted line that's in the sea, right? That's where the beach was in 1971. All right? In this, where it is now in the sea. And if you can see the solid green line, that's where the trees were in 1971. As the sea is rising, it's taking portions of our country. What? And if I ask you how much the sea level is rising, hold that number. You see how you reacted to the temperature? We have been rising by 3.5 millimeters per year. 3.5 millimeters per year. This is a millimeter. All right? But see what it is doing. So, what am I saying? I am saying our science is telling us climate change is not something of the future. We are seeing climate change right now, and we are living in unfamiliar climate. Why is this at all very important? Well, listen, this is important. Hotter temperatures, variable rain, more extremes, higher sea levels, because, and just to make the point, the unfamiliarity is in magnitude. We're hotter. In timing, we dry when we expect wet. In frequency, we're getting more storms. In duration, the drought starts and it just won't end. You know why this is familiar? Because of the very first reason I told you. If we build our lives around the normal climate pattern, then what happens when we don't get the normal? Which is exactly what I'm telling you is happening now. When we don't get the normal, life and all of life changes, is altered. So I want to make the case quickly with last year's drought. Those are the headlines from the Observer with, not last year, 2014 drought, with the 2014 drought. And you can see all kinds of headlines. You would have expected these headlines, one that says food, because if you don't get any rain, you're not going to get any food. And it's there. But as you went on, you'd expect these fires, because when you dry out now, you expect. But look what happened as the drought dragged on. Water lock-off forces closure of schools. Education begins to suffer. And then what else happens? Water is cutting hydro and causing power outage. Lack of water in Portmore. Energy begins to suffer. Look what happens. Drought hits business owners. Car washes have to lay off people. Livelihoods begin to suffer. And then look, drought slows economic growth. Can you see what I'm saying? When we move outside the normal, it's all of life that's impacted. Climate change is not just a little rise in temperature. It's an impact on our everyday life. Wanted to quickly make this point. You see those 13 storms or 12 storms that hit us? Those are they. In 01, we got Michelle, and it cost us 0.8% of our GDP. Then we got the May-June flood rains in 02, and it cost us 0.7%. And we think we got away in 03, so Charlie and Ivan made it up for us in 04. 0.02 and 8% of our GDP. Then Dennis and Emily, 1.2. Wilma, 0.7. Dean, 3.4. Gustav, 2. Nicole, 1.9. Sandy, 0.9. What am I saying? You never get a chance as a country to recover. Climate change is not only an energy issue, as I was saying, it's a developmental issue. Because we're always spending money to fix back from the last thing, including the health sector. That 8% that we spent on IBAN should be 8% we spent on health or education or something. Climate change is a developmental issue. All right, so that was very quickly. So my first reason why we have to consider it is what again? Our context we live lives linked to climate. Our second reason is what? And you know what that is telling me? We are already living lives altered by climate. One last reason. You know, the third reason why we have to consider it, we have to consider it because our context commands it. We have to consider it because our science suggests it. We have to consider it for this. Our future depends on it. Let me explain quickly. So this is really what I do as a physicist. And I show that our future is going to see unprecedented climate change. How do I show this? Very quickly. I use computer models, and then I take scenarios of how the world is going to develop and what it means for greenhouse gases. And I take a best case, greenhouse gases going to go up and come down. Nobody believes it's going to happen. And I take a worst case, greenhouse gas is just going to keep going up and up and up. And I code these scenarios in my computer models which describe the physical world and come up with the future climate. Let me tell you the future climate for Jamaica from my models. What was the first thing that changed? I told you again, temperatures did what? All right. Anywhere it is orange or red, we're hot. All right. By the end of this century, Jamaica will be 1 to 4 degrees hotter than we are now. Wait, how much we got hot already by? And you feel it, don't it? So what happened when we reach 4 degrees? All right, under the best to worst case scenario. Not only is Jamaica going to be 4 degrees hotter, but up to 98% of all days will be hot considered by today's standards. Summer will start in January. All right? And only 2% of the days are going to be cool. Actually, there will be no difference. It's just going to be summer all year round. Our future is one of an extremely hot Jamaica. Well, I can't deal with it now, so I don't know. All right. What was the second thing that changed? So the temperatures got hotter. What was the second thing? The rainfall became what? Absolutely. Well, on top of the variability, which never goes, we are going to be drier. Anywhere that's brown is dry. You can't find Jamaica in the brown. All right? We're going to be 30% drier than we are now. And the drying is going to be in May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Wait. But that is when we expect to get rain. All right? We're going to be dry. All right? We're going to have more severe droughts. So the kind of droughts that we had last year will increase in frequency. Jamaica is going to be drier. If you want to find an issue of climate change in the future, it is water. We must deal with water. All right? So we're hotter. I'm giving you the good news. We're drier. All right? What was the third thing that changed? The storms. The top diagram shows you category 4 and 5 storms. No, the bottom one shows you category 4 and 5 storms in the future. I'm not telling you that we're getting more storms. I'm telling you that when the storms come, they will be more intense. All right? Boy, batten down that house now. And the last thing, hotter temperatures, drier Jamaica, more intense storms, is sea levels. If you can see that diagram, anywhere that is a little blue on the south coast is gone due to the 1 to 2 meters of sea level rise we will see by the end of century. Wait, but we saw 3.5 millimeters. And by the end of the century, we will see 1 to 2 meters of sea level. By the way, Portmore is gone in that diagram. But, and if you want to know what 2 meters of sea level rise will do, 1% of Jamaica's land area will be lost. Well, 1% of the people who live on those areas will be displaced. And 20% of our power plants are lost. 18% of our tourism resorts, because they're all on the coast. 60% of our airports, I don't know which 60. 2% of the roads, and 100% of our port structures. We don't have a pretty picture looking on the future. What's the point that I'm trying to make? The future that we are looking at is a future of unprecedented climate change. Why is that at all important? Because of that very first point. Unprecedented climate change means that health will be impacted, agriculture, forestry, water, coastal, wildlife, anything because we are so climate sensitive. You know, I put this one in the, and once those impacts start to happen, they will be unprecedented, and life as we now know it is going to be under threat. And the threat is an interesting threat. It's a pervasive threat. There's nothing about Jamaican life that will not be touched. It's a growing threat because the climate is gradually changing, and we have to watch it. But the worst part about it is that it's an unequally distributed threat. You know what I'm trying to say? There are some amongst us who will be able to deal with it, but there are some who will not. And climate change comes down hard on the vulnerable. Who are the vulnerable? Well, the poor, children, elderly, outdoor workers who have to be in the sun, a security guard, a cleaner, a sportsman, actually, for that matter. Okay. Structures that have been built that never factored in this kind of climate change. Historic structures, biodiversity that only lives within a small things. The thing is, when climate change happens, the impacts are not equally distributed. And we have to begin to think about this now, especially even in the health sector. How will those who can't afford the drugs handle the greater influx of disease? Life is under threat, and we need to think about that. Very quickly, if I was to choose 4 areas that you want to think about. Water. We're going to have a water deficit. We need to deal with it. Think how your industry depends on water. Think how your life depends on water. We have a challenge with food security. In fact, there are parts of Jamaica on the coast that will no longer be useful for growing food. The best place to grow foods will be in the interior. But wait, that's where the forests are. Am I going to cut down the forest to deal with the food? It's the question. Coastal infrastructure and livelihoods. The top one is Caribbean terrace. Those people never expected to get out. That's climate change. The bottom one is Hellshire. The structures on the beach are in the ocean. All those livelihoods. Think about the tourism industry and all the people who work in those industries. The last one is health. We're clearly going to have to deal with more mosquito-borne diseases. Increasing temperatures mean that the mosquito bites more, so you can spread the disease. And it doesn't matter whether you have flood or drought, we're going to have the vector. Because in flood, you pool the water. In drought, you store it for the mosquito. And then, it doesn't matter. Respiratory diseases. We're talking about direct impacts from things like flood and when it mixed with our improper garbage disposal. And then we're talking about having to respond in more intense hurricanes. We're going to have a challenge to deliver adequate health care in an already overburdened health system. Climate change is something that matters to me and you. So my third reason, first reason is our context commands it. Our context tells us we live lives linked to climate. Our science suggests that we live lives altered by climate. And what's my third reason? Because we live lives threatened by climate. Let me do one last thing before I come down. I don't want to leave you with doom and gloom. I'm giving, I hear that it's a no stress meeting. Let me not leave you with any stress. You know what I'm really saying? If you put these 3 things together, then clearly climate must be a matter that you and you and you and you and you think about. Whether you are as an individual, as a small business owner, as a corporate entity, as a national. I'm really saying that, listen, we have to act. And the action can't be down the line. The action has to be now. And we have to act in multiple levels. Nobody must feel excluded. Yeah, the globe has to act. That's what the Paris Agreement was last December. We have to come together and decide we're going to limit climate change. They have decided to limit it to 2 degrees by the end of the century. Wait, we have seen 1 and they are going for another 2? The whole world? Well, that's the global community. We clearly have to act as a region because together we have a stronger voice than individually. Our country needs to make some serious decisions about the sectors, including the health sector. At the community, however you define community, whether it's church or physical community or the people you hang out and play dominoes with, whatever, you have to start thinking about climate change. And then last is you. You as an individual have to think about it. You really have to think, how am I going to act in response to it? And the reason why you are so important is that the likelihood of having any action only increases as I go to the center. It's more likely that I will get you to act than I will get the globe to do anything. All right? How you must act? Quickly, we have to mitigate. You know what mitigation is? Lessening the problem that caused it. So we have to stop putting out so much greenhouse gases. Jamaica only has 3 mitigation options. One is energy. We have to change from fossil fuels individually all the way up to nationally. Waste. We have to learn to deal with waste. All right? Major problem. All right? And then we need to preserve our forests. And we need to plant. There's a role for you, go all the way up. So our action has to be mitigation. Our action also has to be adaptation. I tell you the truth, no matter what we do, we are going to live with climate change. You and I are not going to see the reversibility of climate change. We are going into hotter times and more variable water. We have to adapt to it. How we must adapt? So many ways. I'm just throwing up a few. We need to deal with water as an individual and as a sector. All right? Right now, we depend on rain for water. When rain don't fall, we do not have water. We need to deal with water. We need to deal with coastal infrastructure. I use seawalls as my example. Anybody drive St. Thomas and notice the Roselle Road, or you can call all other places where the road is gone? All right. We need to deal with where we get food from. That's what greenhouse farming is doing. All right? It's an adaptation so we can grow food whether we have rain or not. We need to deal with building smart. How we build our houses. Can't continue building in the same way. The houses not only trap heat by not allowing things to pass through, but they're not strong enough either. And then clearly as a country we need to deal with policies. Policies about where we allow people to live. If we know that there is a danger on the coast or on the gully bank or on the riverside, why are we putting people to live there? But we have to deal with it. And if it means providing a social security net for people who can find no other place to live, we must do it. We need to deal with policies that are going to protect the most vulnerable amongst us. I named them for you already. And then when you deal with policies, you need to deal with enforcement. But I leave that there. And then lastly, if I'm telling you that we have to change how we behave, then the only way to change how we behave is through education. This is where I find that you have a fantastic opportunity. You are frontline educators. Any man who comes to you with a prescription, you are talking to them one-on-one. You can't get better educators than that. And some of these things are going to require behavioral change. And you are in a position to help start that behavioral change. You have a critical role as a sector. So, what am I saying? 3 reasons why we must consider climate. I'm glad I don't hear no booze yet. Reason number 1, what was it again? And our context is one of lives linked to climate. Reason number 2, and our scientists telling climate change is not in the future. Our lives are already being altered by climate. And reason number 3, our future is one where we're going to see bigger climate change than we have seen already. Our lives are being threatened by climate change. So I argue that's why climate is something for you and you and you and you and you and you. I told you that the challenge was to act. It must be action by everybody, and it must be mitigation, adaptation, and education. I close with this then. You know what happens when we do that action now? We end up with lives resilient to climate change. Climate change no longer becomes this ominous and difficult thing to deal with because we're dealing with it and we're dealing with it now. climate matters to me and you. Thank you.
All right. Him work before the beep beep start. Okay, so same procedure. 3 questions, and your time starts now. You ready? You live in Portmore? Go ahead, Mrs. Cowan.
All right, thank you very much for your kind words. Listen, I completely agree with you, and that really wasn't a question. You were really expressing your stress, right? And, you know, there's only so much I can say about climate change in the time that they give me, and I was so intimidated by the noise that, you know, I didn't want it to actually hit me. But you know what you're really talking about, and it would be for the next time that you invite me back here to speak. You're talking about that climate change can't be tackled by one sector or one little entity. I won't make that comment. Anyway, how we have treated climate and the environment, it is a little nook in a department stuck somewhere, wherever. All right? And we tend to say that that is the purview and they must deal with climate change. My reason for going and speaking and even coming here and being intimidated by such a wonderful looking set of people is trying to say, listen, every single person needs to be considering climate change at the same time. And so the problem with the man who is cutting down the tree is that he doesn't have an alternative livelihood. And so we need that the social welfare ministries or whoever must be dealing with alternative livelihood training so that when you stop the man from cutting down the trees, he has an option, right? But we don't think of climate change like that. We think it's for somebody out there to just stop somebody from throwing some garbage. But it's the same kind of problem that hotel workers face. When climate change warms the world, people don't have to come here for sun and sand because they're warm where they are. So what happens when the hotel industry dips? What happens to those workers? They too need to be retooled. Climate change is a livelihoods issue. You understand what I'm saying? So my response to you is that we need to be tackling climate change simultaneously across all fronts, because climate change, that first point, that sensitivity runs through everything, right? But we're not there yet. We have an awareness of climate change. We think we know it, in fact. We say, oh, we're getting hotter, and that's it. But we don't realize that it impacts all of our life in this little country, Jamaica. And so that's my best answer for you, that what do I need you to do? I need you to play your individual part. So I need you to, yes, talk to the people. And I need you to set the example by not doing it. But then I also need you to become the advocate. So don't talk to the man necessarily. Go and talk to the ministry and say, listen, deal with alternative livelihood training. I can't tell him to stop cutting down the tree if he don't have something else to do.
Okay, next question. All right. I'm not taking a question from that side from morning, so go ahead for me, sir.
Just a quick question. The Trump greenhouse gas, how long did it take to stay?
Excellent question. So what we talk about is residence time in the atmosphere. Even if the whole world stopped putting out greenhouse gases today, which will never happen, right? We would have greenhouse gases in the atmosphere probably to the end of this century. The increased elevation, of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere to the end of the century. So the point there is that we have committed ourselves to climate change by our past actions. What we're trying to do now is figure out how we can lessen it for those who will come after. But even if everybody stopped, we're not escaping it.
Climate change as part of the curriculum.
Yes. Yes, it's already underway. It is in the GSAT curriculum and heading up through the high school. What I would ask you is, in your spheres, are you looking now at ways in which you can incorporate climate change education? So whether through the church curriculum, the Sunday schools, or in the pharmacy yourself. I mean, I go to pharmacies regularly, and I see lots of nice posters about diseases. Could we have one about climate change and the impact on health, and why you know, those kinds of things. I'm just throwing out a challenge that education doesn't only belong in the formal sector. Now that you know, it's your responsibility as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, I agree with you. And those agencies do budget for things. Of course, the challenge is always, you know, you can never budget enough. We are in a situation of constraint. And when something happens, you know, when get cut first. But they do budget, and we need to support them in their efforts. Thank you again very much for having me.
Professor Taylor, on behalf of all of us, I'm sure that you all join me in saying how much of a comprehensive education we received today. You not only scared us about the realities, but you inspired us about what's possible to become more resilient to climate change. And so we want to thank you for taking the time. We promise you that climate change will become a regular part of our curriculum. And we want to thank you for the leadership role that you already play in this country in leading us to a place where, as a country, we can become more resilient against climate change. So thank you very much on behalf of Cari-Med, Abbott, and all of us present.
Thank you very much.